When I was in 8th grade, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then she went into remission, and then it came back in multiple parts of her body. Ultimately, when I was 17, she passed away. Also, my dad's mom had breast cancer, and there cancer's just throughout my family. So I always knew in my life, it was never if I was gonna get breast cancer, I just knew it was a matter of time. It was when. And I knew that in my soul, in my core. And so in some weird way, I had like prepared myself for this, right? And the first mammogram I got, I think I was 27, and they found a lump. Thankfully, it was benign. And we went on to have a baby and then another baby, and I was 34 at the time. So there was this, it's kind of a high-risk screening process where it's every 6 months. It rotates between a mammogram and an MRI. In October, I went in for a mammogram and they didn't find anything. And then in April, I went in for my MRI, and that's when they caught a spot. And they were like, okay, this is probably nothing. I remember the nurse telling me that. This is just to calm me down, like, this is probably nothing, but. And then about 2 days later, I got the call from my doctor saying that it was cancer. And luckily enough for me, because I was so on top and proactive about my screening, they caught it at stage 0. So the mammogram would never have even caught it if that was the time, like on that cycle that I would have been on. So it was stage 0, and the options for me at the time were a unilateral mastectomy, so like losing one breast, or it was a lumpectomy and radiation. And I failed to mention that, like, before the first mammogram of mine, I got the BRCA gene testing, and it was negative. And at that time, I told myself that if it's positive, I know what I want to do. I'm going to take super aggressive measures because I don't ever want to die of breast cancer. So I would have chosen a double mastectomy at that time in my life. And I remember sitting on the stairs in my foyer, and my doctor told me, like, it's cancer. These are your 2 options. And I said, no. I said, I want a double mastectomy, because my grandma had one breast removed, and then it came back again, and then she had to have her second breast removed. And I just knew, like, I don't want any chance of not being here with my kids. Like, I don't need my breasts. If I have another baby, I will bottle feed and deal with that when that time comes. But I want to secure any amount of health that I can for myself and lower the odds of it ever recurring. And so I said, I want a double mastectomy. I lost my mom to it. My grandmother had it. Other women in my family had it. And so I've seen it can just wreak such havoc on a family, and it's so sad, the kind of what can happen from that. I would never change anything about the decision I made. And, there were some really dark moments, like, after it happened, when you would look in the mirror, and because they had to remove my nipples, like, I had very large breasts before breast cancer. So the amount of tissue they had to remove and the amount of skin, and they had to take my nipples. And I remember looking in the mirror. It was almost like when I got diagnosed, I was just like, head down, go forward. And it was 2 weeks until I had my surgery. And that's all I was focused on. I wasn't emotional about it, and it was really odd. It was just like, I had a job to do, and this is the job I'm gonna do. But I remember after my surgery, I had expanders put in, I have no nipples, like huge scars, drains, and I remember looking in the mirror, and just like those were like the darkest moments, because that was the realization of what had happened. And I was not mourning the loss of my breasts. I was just like overwhelmed that this is my reality now, and that this is what I'm dealing with. And it was like, you look at your body and it looks just deformed. And you have to get used to that. But you also have to know that 6 months from now it will look very different, right? Because the reconstruction, the plastic surgery, like, there's so many amazing options offered up to us now because of that. But I remember those were the darkest days for me. It was after the surgery, sitting like by myself with my husband, and just like, whoa, feeling really overwhelmed. I think what's so important, and what I learned so much through having cancer and going through the surgery and everything, was that you have to be 100% your advocate. It's not that the doctor's not going to give you every option, but you have to ask every question you can, because maybe they'll give you 1 or 2 options, but there might be a third option. And in my case, there was a third option. And it's the one that almost guarantees me that I will never have breast cancer again.